Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address. I am your host, Sam Wu, here with PucksandPitchforks.com editor-in-chief, Nick Villano, as we're streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X Live, Twitch, and now on Instagram Live. Coming to you live from the Primetime Radio Studios inside the bunkers, both North and South Jersey. Streaming all over the world, especially the Garden State. We got it covered. Talking some more Devils hockey. Yeah, baby, more Devils hockey. And it's May 20th, 2026. Nick, I don't know where you want to start because there's been some decisions made by the new GM. And I don't know what other title he may possess, but Sonny made a decision or two.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had to start with the head coach, right? I told you something different, and I'm sorry, but I kind of forgot that Sheldon Keefe is keeping his job, just because there's so much that's happening. But I do want to ask you about Sheldon Keefe because I wrote last week, I think it was last week, that Chris Knobloch becoming available I thought was going to change that. But I think we just got to a point where, like, it was unfair to Sheldon Keefe. Similar to, like, what happened with Edmonton, right? Edmonton was, like, shopping around to see if they could find someone better than Knobloch. They got caught because of asking Bruce Cassidy, for permission to speak with them and getting denied and that becoming a bigger story. So they got caught. And they kind of had to fire Knobloch. I thought that would intrigue Maeda enough to be like, I kind of want to talk to this guy before I make a decision on Keefe. But again, you kind of get to a point where you're being unfair to Keefe. You got to remember that, like, Maeda's basically like, the head of a division at a company. And the head of a division still has to get people to buy in, just like any other company. And if you're sitting here dangling one of your decision makers for weeks just because you want to see if you can get someone better, you're going to lose people quickly. And I don't think he wants to do that. So I think he made a decision where he's like, Keefe is not the perfect coach, but he's the one we have here. He's good enough probably to get us to where we need to be next season. I think Keefe needs playoff success next season to keep his job. I think another first-round exit, and he, Maeda's going to look for another option. But I think it's fine. I also think there's a possibility that they had a conversation where Keefe said, I'm running Tom Fitzgerald's system, because the system doesn't look the same as it did in Toronto. It looks much different. It wasn't working, especially in the defensive zone. The defensive zone was atrocious. Their zone exits were awful. Like, how many times did the Devils fail to get the puck out of the zone and then it ended up in a goal against? Like that. That was just a big, big, big problem. But yeah, listen, I'm fine with it. I'm not happy. I'm not sad. I'm fine. Sure, keep Keefe. That's kind of where I'm at. Where are you at with Keefe?
Somewhat of a different opinion, but I agree with what you're saying. At the same time, this is where I'm a little bit different. I think right now, Sonny Maeda is not just firing coaches just to fire coaches' sake. I think he's actually doing an honest evaluation of what has gone on with the New Jersey Devils. You talk about fairness. I don't think that had anything to do with that, although I do believe that doing what other teams did, like Edmonton and all that, it's bad juju to begin with. So you try to avoid that as much as possible, because if Sonny Maeda did that to Sheldon Keefe, where, you didn't let him go right away and as you're shopping around, but he can't shop around, I don't think that's right. I don't think it's morally right, but at the same time, I think Sheldon Keefe at the moment is the only choice because he can turn this thing around. I've always felt like he was, I wouldn't say a puppet, but I think he rebelled a few times, during last season, in a very subtle way. With how this team was, I don't know, the way they controlled him, like you were saying. And I agree with you about Tom Fitzgerald, his system or whatever. Look, who was making the freaking decisions on these goalies down the stretch? I mean, so far, every decision he's made so far is sensible. It's common sense. I think every decision. We'll get into later.
This is his first even remotely controversial decision, and there's more to it. But yeah, no, I agree. I think he's making every common sense move to start.
Yeah, nothing. I wouldn't say nothing bold here. Nothing, nothing outside the box. Because that's how we as fans felt the goaltending was subpar at best. And
it's been atrocious. The goaltending is why Jack Hughes has been in the playoffs once.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it. The goaltending is why. And it's goaltending development because Scott Wedgwood's thriving in Colorado. Mackenzie Blackwood is doing just fine in Colorado, and he was decent in San Jose. Corey Crawford had his issues, so that's kind of its own thing. But Vanacek fell off a cliff. Nobody knows why. Akira Schmid's development went in the tank. Nico Dawes hasn't been able to take that next step in his development, and he might be gone. You had a guy you spent a third-round pick on. He was really high hopes for this Nico Dawes kid. I think he was the top goaltending prospect in Canada that year, and at times looked like an NHL goalie as far as 3 or 4 years ago, and just couldn't develop the kid into an NHL goalie.
They ruined him.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples of just blowing it with really talented guys, and he's the only coach that kept surviving, right? He was the only coach who survived. Was he under Hines? Was he there under Hines, or did he start with Lindy?
I think he was with. That's a good question. I think he was under Lindy.
Okay.
He might have been with Hines. Yeah, I'll let me do the research. You keep talking.
So this is a guy who's gotten through regimes. Ryan McGill and who's the other guy that's
Taylor
stayed? Taylor. They both got left after 1 year under Keefe. And he got to bring in Bradshaw, who I really like. I wrote earlier this offseason that Shaw is the guy you want to keep. If you keep or get rid of Keefe, you want to keep Shaw. Shaw's a really good defensive coach. Something was off last year. It was the overall system, and I think that he gets to kind of run a different system this year with Maeda in charge. Colleton's a surprise to me. The offense died for most of the year, especially with Jack Hughes injured. Not even when he was out. When he was out, okay, that's kind of an excuse. I didn't love it, but when Jack Hughes came back and you couldn't figure out how to get the most out of him, that really came down to coaching. And the coaching from the time Jack Hughes returned, from the time that Quinn Hughes was traded to Minnesota, to be honest, from the time that Quinn Hughes was traded to Minnesota to the Olympic break, was an atrocious coaching job, top to bottom. That's where the Devils missed the playoffs. That's where the season went off the rails. That's where we lost everything. And it's because the coaching couldn't get this team motivated. It couldn't get this team, They would come out of the gates flying, and then Jacob Markstrom or sometimes even Jake Allen will allow a bad goal, and game over. First or second period, it was over. this team was missing some chutzpah, some guts. And then they leave for 3 weeks. Some go win a gold medal. Some go on vacation. They come back. They look like a different team. And it was too little too late, but that's a playoff team that played from, the end of February to the end of the season. Right? Like, that's a team that was going to make the playoffs if you played like that all season. And I think what happened is they needed a reset. The schedule was brutal in the first, 4 months of the season. The schedule was brutal. But, that's where you need a good coach. I just don't think he did a great job. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. That doesn't mean he deserves to be fired. That doesn't mean I've lost complete faith in him. But with Colleton, because you see, Colleton's the one who holds the pen, when you call a timeout or when you're getting ready for a power play or you're getting ready for an offensive zone faceoff. He's the one who holds the pen. He had a couple good set plays that made a lot of sense, but it was that sustained offense that you weren't getting. You weren't getting rebound chances. A lot of the guys' shots had lost miles per hour on it. I don't know if that's something the coaches can handle, but it's definitely something that I noticed. You weren't Dougie Hamilton was taking a ton of shots, and they weren't going to the right places in the first half of the season. It seemed like there was a lot of guys who needed a reset. Dougie Hamilton got that reset when he was benched. There was a couple guys dealing with injuries. Like Simone Nemec was not the same guy when he came back from his injury. There's just a lot going on. I need more from the offense. There's a lot to do on this team. I'm glad they figured out the decision makers quickly, right? You just want people in place. I do want to talk about Sergey Brylin, though, because I don't like that move at all. I get you're going to move him to the front office. You have this young contingent of Russian players coming. You have Gritsik on the team right now, and I think him having Brylin there really made him comfortable. You have Anton Silyev, who Dave Pagnotta of the fourth period said today that he thinks that he's going to sign next month. So you got Silyev, a former 10th overall pick, who's going to really need that development. And I know he's going to start in the AHL, but it would be good in that training camp to have Brylin there. And then you got Mikhail Yurgarev. It sounds like he's going back to Boston University, which I think is a mistake, but he's another guy. I think he speaks pretty good English, but again, just that comfortability level for Gritsik and for Silyev to have a guy who could speak with them and have the goalie speak with them. And, I think it's a mistake. It's a mistake beyond that because, Brylin's a legend with this team and kind of holds that gravitas of the previous Devils. And I think it's important for a team like this, a team that's – I think of Detroit, right? Detroit's a team that has a legacy that they just haven't lived up to in more than a decade. I think the Devils are in a similar position. Detroit has a longer legacy, but the Devils still have an impactful legacy for where they were. People still talk about those early, those 90s and 2000s teams with Brodeur and Stevens and Niedermeyer. That's still top of mind for a lot of people of how impactful, especially if you live through it. I think having Brylin on this team and having that connection to that legacy is still kind of important. Again, I know he's in the front office. I know he still has a job, but I think taking him off the coaching staff, it felt like a mistake to me.
But you never know, Nick. Maybe he wanted the front office job. You don't know that.
Then it's his mistake.
All right.
You know what I mean? I still think it's a mistake for the team. I want to be CEO of my company. I don't get to do that. You know what I mean? I got to do the job that I'm paid to do. So I think it's a mistake. Hopefully he's this isn't one of those like he's getting a front office job and then he'll jump to another organization pretty quickly. There was that rumor, I think it was last year, where he was going to take a head coaching job in the KHL. I don't know if you remember that, and that didn't end up happening. That's probably still on the table. There's a lot of KHL teams, and a lot of them like those former NHL players, and I think Breland is a good personality for that type of environment. Man, I don't know. That was the one that I was a little iffy on.
But Breland strikes me as a guy that rather be in North America than back in Russia.
I don't know the guy, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's stayed, so you got to say that, like, yeah, I think he likes being in the organization. Because what? He's been a coach.
He's a lifer. He's a lifer.
But he's been a coach for, 15 years? It's a long time.
I have no idea. I haven't been counting.
He was with the Albany River Rats, I think.
Yeah.
So, and he's moved. Like, he moved from Albany to Utica to Binghamton. Back in Utica. Actually, I don't think it was in Utica. I think he never did at Utica. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to double check. But he's definitely moved from Albany to Binghamton. So he's that's interesting. Sam, did you see that the Trenton, was it Ironbirds? They're not going to be the Devils' ECHL affiliate.
Yeah, that's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, they're going to. I mean, listen, it's still local. It's the Islanders. What's the Rangers' ECHL team? Do you know? I have no idea.
I don't remember.
Yeah. So again, it's not that relevant, but yeah. Listen, I was a little surprised that there's some minor league news, but they did say Ben Burnell has been on this podcast a couple times. I think he's of the Utica. Was it the Daily Journal or something? No, the Sentinel. The Sentinel.
Yeah.
He said that in Adirondacks end of season media availability, they said they expected an announcement soon or the Devils are going to re-up. That's the expectation. So looks like Adirondack is going to continue to be their ECHL team. You don't get a ton of guys from the ECHL. Cam Squires is the one that I'm really looking for because he has all the talent in the world, but he had to play in Adirondack last year. He's like the only guy I'm thinking of. Brennan was a guy who I used to have some hopes for as a goalie, but there's just too many guys who have passed him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. And listen, Adirondack was the one team in this organization that made the playoffs last year. So that's not nothing. Anyway, that was a long soliloquy, but any last words on the coaching hires?
So far so good. I agree. I agree with everything that Sonny Maida has done so far.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't like the Breland thing, but that's it. That's a small thing. It is what it is.
Yeah, but again, as we get closer to the draft and NHL free agency, that's where we're going to see what Sonny's going to do. Lots of rumors out there. Lots of rumors. I've been actually trolling Minnesota Wild fans the last week. It's been fun.
They're pretty mad. Let's talk about this for a sec, because good on them for flipping the script, because I've seen a lot of talk about Nico Hischier going to the Wild. And good on you. Good on you, Minnesota Wild fans and Minnesota Wild writers who have taken the Quinn Hughes discourse and flipped it. And now they're saying, oh, we're going to get your captain. And now I'm seeing people be like, they're just going to go after Hischier without Quinn Hughes. I was like, I don't know who you have to trade for Nico Hischier, but whatever, dude. But I wrote about this right before we got on this podcast. Trading Nico Hischier, even for Quinn Hughes, puts you in the same position that the Wild are in. So the Wild lost to the Avalanche this year. And we don't talk about it enough, but they had everything working for them except for the center position. Joel Eriksson Ek got hurt, and Ryan Hartman was their number one center. Now, if Jack Hughes gets hurt going into the playoffs for the Devils, Cody Glass is your number one guy? And for everybody who's like, we'll just trade for a center. Who? The Montreal Canadiens are in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they've been trying to trade for a center all season. I think they finally got – did they get to know? Or they got somebody, but –
Well, remember that rumor that was out there a couple years ago? Or somebody suggested it in the Montreal media about trading one of their scrubs for Nico Hischier? You know.
Oh, was it Josh Anderson?
It was something like that. Yeah. It was just –
Josh Anderson's always going to the Devils.
Yeah. So, Hischier's not going anywhere. Unless he doesn't want to be here. He's not going anywhere, Nick. And I don't know why. You know what bothers me? Are Devils fans that are offering up Nico Hischier thinking they would get a deal done. Bill Guerin does not hold the cards here. He simply doesn't. Sonny Maeda can just wait this thing out for one more season as he tries to put everything together. Bill Guerin.
Yeah, I think the risk in that. Go ahead.
No, Bill Guerin in that press conference, he was really stern. You know, he's basically doing an acting job that nobody. What did he say? Everybody's on the table.
Oh, everybody's available.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, right. Yeah, right.
I think he did a bad job, and I wrote about this on pucksandpitchforks.com. He did a bad job in that press conference, straight up.
Kind of looked like an a-hole, to be honest with you. And I wouldn't stay there after listening to that.
He looked bad. He put himself in a corner with the Quinn Hughes thing because he said it was the number one thing. So if you go into September and you haven't signed Quinn Hughes, we know you failed, right?
Yep.
And the pressure's now on the players, on you as general manager, on your coaches to succeed right away, or that's the conversation once Quinn Hughes leaving. Instead, he should have slow played and be like, these are complicated. Do I wish it'll happen on July 1st? Sure. But we're going to be patient, you know, and you got to set the standard for the fan base. But instead, he's like, nope, number one priority. This is what we have to do. We have to sign Quinn Hughes. Well, guy, you might not. You know, and then, you know, if it goes into September, you basically put yourself in a corner. My issue is I don't think you can make the Quinn Hughes mistake twice. Tom Fitzgerald blew this so terribly. And I think he had an arrogance that a lot of Devils fans had, in which he was like, I'm just going to sign him at the end of the season. I will wait 2 years for Quinn Hughes instead of giving up, you know. I think the package was Nemeth, Silyev, Mercer, a first-round pick.
That was exactly the package.
Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you just do it?
He could have moved money around quickly to get it done.
So,
right?
Well, doing that is Mercer making 4?
Yeah, 4.5, I think. 4.25.
Okay. So doing that takes about $5 million off. You couldn't find $2 million?
Well, just remember, you had players coming off of LTIR. It was a mess at that moment. You got to go back in time. The cap situation. There was no room at
Yeah,
at
but you
that time.
could have. Jack Hughes was clearly still hurt, and he came back early. You could have said, Jack, we'll wait till your cast comes off. And that gives you time to trade a Dougie Hamilton or trade a Kovacevic or trade a whoever. Nason. There's a million people you could have traded to make this work. It wasn't that hard. I wrote about it at the time. It really wasn't that hard to make it work without trading Dougie Hamilton. That wasn't imperative. So whether Fitzgerald waited because he wanted to make the trade for Hamilton and Guerin swooped in with a better deal, or if, from what I believe, Fitzgerald didn't like the price. And I just look at him and was like, Mercer's a big question mark. Who's going to need we don't talk about this. Am I mistaken here? Mercer's up for a contract extension this year too, right?
No, it's next season, isn't it?
Well, I think he's eligible to sign now. I think he's still an RFA. Am I crazy?
No, he's still an RFA.
Yeah, so either way, you could extend him if you wanted to. I'm looking at all these guys. We all complain about Mercer, but he still scores a consistent 19 to 25 goals every year. And those guys are getting paid. Charlie Coyle got $6 million. Like, Mercer's going to get a raise, whether it's here or somewhere else. And Nemitz is going to get paid. You know, so you're looking at it. Not only, if you're the Devils, could you have gotten Quinn Hughes, second best defenseman in the world, but you kind of got rid of two problems because you kind of have to pay some of them that's way above what he's worth right now. And you got to pay, next year you're probably either going to trade Mercer for less than an impact player, or you're going to pay him more than what he's probably worth, just like Columbus just did with Charlie Coyle. And I know Coyle's different because he was a UFA. I get that. I still think Mercer's going to make about that much money. The cap's going up. We're in a weird world right now. Alex Tuch is still going to make over $10 million. And I don't think Alex Tuch is that good. I don't think Alex Tuch is a top 30 player in this league. He's about to make over $10 million. It's a weird world we live in right now when it comes to the NHL salaries, and we kind of have to get used to it. And I think the salary cap's going to compensate for it eventually, but it might take a little bit of time before we catch up completely. But just kind of going back to where we were, the original conversation, trading Heischer's insane. This is what is eventually going, again, it hasn't worked out. That's fine. Your advantage is your centers. If you can go into the playoffs with Hughes and Hischier healthy, and Hischier's almost always healthy going into the playoffs. If you go into the playoffs with Hughes and Hischier healthy, there's an advantage there. You did in 2023, and you made it to the second round, and the scheduling didn't work out for you. I look at it and I say, this is the one, just don't do it. Just sign Hischier. And again, there's a number that's too much. If we get to 12 on Hischier, then I'm starting to say, okay, maybe I'll think about what else is out there. Because I do think you could overspend on a trade for Tyler Bertuzzi. Or, you can hope and pray Ryan O'Reilly still has a couple years left in him. Or, you sign Evgeny Malkin for a year until you figure it out. The problem is the Devils haven't drafted centers. There's no centers in this organization. Matthias Malofsky is your best center prospect. And I got him in the 10 to 15 range in their prospects overall. And the Devils don't have a great prospect pool anymore.
Nope.
So it's a bad spot to be in. Now, you could draft one this year, but 12th overall, I don't think you're getting a guy who is going to be that game changer. I do wonder, The word on the street is that 2 overalls available. If I'm the Devils, I just go to the Sharks and I just say, I'll give you Nemitz, Hamilton, and the 12th overall pick for 2. You get 2 premium right-handed defensemen. One who was a 2nd overall pick in a weaker draft. But Stenberg solves your top 6 issue forever. If Toronto goes Stenberg, then the dream is that McKenna falls to you. I don't think he's going to. I think McKenna's going to Toronto. But Stenberg solves your top 6 issue long-term, short-term, medium-term, forever-term. I think he's ready to make somewhat of an impact in the NHL this year. I think he's going to be good, and then he'll be great eventually. And I think San Jose really thinks about that trade. They like Hamilton. We know that. They were going to pay a premium for him last year. And Hamilton blocked the trade. I don't think Hamilton will block the trade this year unless taxes were his major issue. And I think the Devils would have to retain some salary in this trade, like maybe like $2 million to get Hamilton down to 7. But again, like you're getting such a premium asset. And here's what's the most premium is you're getting a guy who is going to be an impact player in an ELC. That's huge. Getting a guy for like $1 million is going to make an impact on this team. It's gigantic, especially when you only got 1 season of that for Gritsik and you'll waste it on a non-playoff year. Now you got to pay the guy. So I kind of went a lot of different directions there, Sam, but I try to stick the landing at the end. So here's what I would do in this offseason. I just want you to react to this. You re-sign Hischier. Whether it goes in the season or not, I'm not too concerned. You try to make that Godfather offer. I'd even add a little bit more. Do you want Casey? Do you want Haminaho? Do you want like another high-end piece? Not premium, but high-end? Okay. I think like maybe you can add a Paul Cotter. Or you add like a bottom 6 guy. I think that'll make it work. I would do it. Like, I think Stenberg is the guy. You got to go for it. Like, make the big swing. And then free agency kind of stinks. But there are some middle 6 guys that are intriguing, and I'll talk about it on pucksandpitchforks.com this week. But there are some middle 6 guys I'm like, I would go after that guy. Yeah. So, and then, once you trade Nemitz and Hamilton, you do. So my backup plan got signed today. I wanted Timothy Liljegren from Washington. He actually signed with Washington for more than I thought he was going to get. But you just got to get a third line right-handed defenseman. Not the end of the world. You can get that. You probably. I'm trying to think if you could trade for Quinn Hughes without Nemitz or trading Hischier. I don't think you can do it. I just don't think you have the assets anymore. I think you just got to wait and hope. Hope that he pushes the envelope and you can get him at a slight discount. Because then you're talking about, like, if you get Stenberg, though, I'd be willing to trade Bratt for Quinn. Would Minnesota do that? That kind of puts them in the same position, right? They really need top 6 forwards. Who was... Matt Zuccarello was on their top line in the playoffs with Kirill Kaprizov. Can you imagine Jesper Bratt with Kirill Kaprizov?
It would be sick.
Eriksson Ek, Kirill Kaprizov, Jesper Bratt would be one of the best lines in the league. So I think that's the only route that you would have. And I would do that. If you have Stenberg, I think it would hurt, but not as much as a Nico Hischier trade would hurt. I don't know if Minnesota would do that because it kind of, again, they need the center. But it's something I would consider. You know, you're making all these moves. But, I mean, can you imagine that if you got – I think Gritzik's going to take a step next year. So I think you're looking at – it would be a top 6 of Meyer, Hischier, Gritsik. Hughes, Brown, and Stenberg. Not the most ideal, but I'd be fine with it to start. And then your third line would be something like Glass, Hamanaho. Because your fourth line would be Cotter, Nason, and Bustad. Who am I missing? I'm missing somebody.
What, on the third line or the fourth
Mercer.
line?
On the third line, Mercer. Yeah. Yeah, I'd move Mercer to the third line and make it Glass, Haminaho, Mercer. I think McLaughlin could be an NHL player next year. And you might have noticed I didn't mention Siplikov. His buyout is super cheap. They should just buy him out and just kind of go that route. I think it's a playoff team. And then you'd have enough money to, and your defense would be, on the left side it would be Luke Hughes, Brendan Dillon, and Jonas Siegenthaler. On the right side would be Kovacevic, Pesci. I was like, well, who am I missing? It would be Kovacevic, Pesci, and then you'd have to sign somebody for that third line. I would also re-sign McEwen. I've been big on that. I think McEwen perfectly fit this team, and he just got hurt. I want McEwen back on this team, so I hope Maeda re-signs him. People think I'm crazy, but the little I saw, I was like, I want this dude every night. That's the type of dude you rally around. And you'd have money to make moves during the season. I think that's a playoff team with the ability to make moves during the season. Kovacevic is the biggest issue to me in that scenario, because right-handed defensemen like centers are hard to get your hands on, which is why San Jose would consider that trade in the first place. But I think you're setting yourself up for the present and the future. And Silyev's coming. You can kind of test it. He's not NHL ready. He's probably 2 years away, unfortunately, because you got guys like Dickinson and Boyum, who's NHL ready this year. Would have been really helpful to have them on the team. Can't cry over spilled milk. I look at the situation. And the Devils have certain interesting pieces that can fill holes in other teams. They just have to make sure that they're getting the right pieces back. And something like the second overall pick to get Stenberg, man, I really like that. I really like that a lot. And when San Jose is probably going to take a defenseman, overdrafted defenseman, second overall anyway, I think you can get them to move down. So that's where I'm at, Sam. What do you think of that team that I just said? The depth is a little lacking, but you hope a guy like Shane LeChance gets better. You hope a guy like Xavier Perrant gets better. You hope a guy like Mark McLaughlin gets better. You hope a guy like
I mean, in theory, it sounds all great, but sometimes it just doesn't work out the way you want it to. I'm just trying to digest it. It's just, I think the key thing right now is, these young kids that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. Sonny made and the other guy, I forgot his name. He just hired Birch.
Birch, yeah.
They got to fast track that immediately because the pipeline was awesome for many years, but it came at a price of losing so badly. And now you have Jack Hughes on a really, really nice contract on the back half. You got 4 years. The window doesn't stay open too long. You've got to figure out how to put this team together. And also, if you're going to make bold moves like bringing Quinn Hughes to New Jersey, you're going to have to rely on some of these guys on the bottom six, these guys that you were talking about, and hope that they perform. But again, Utica's had an interim head coach for 2 years straight. The same guy.
I don't know what's going on there. We haven't heard about that. And Sam, I feel like we're getting crazy pills because I'm the only person talking about this. Nobody's talking about this. I haven't seen anybody talk about this. And listen, we lost 2 beat reporters, or we lost 2 beats. Daniel Moya went to work for James Nichols. And then Ryan Novosinski just left the beat entirely to go, work at the Philadelphia Inquirer, which we're happy for both of them, both friends of the podcast. We appreciate them both, but I don't know if you saw on Twitter, Sam. I don't want to cause drama. James is throwing stones at pucks and pitchforks tonight.
Why is that?
It's the off season, Sam, and they're talking about ads. Too many ads on one of my writers kind of went out over the line.
Oh, I think I saw something. I didn't know what it was about.
I didn't comment on it because I was like, I'm gonna let the boys figure it out.
Yeah, you gotta have your army figure it out. You can't get involved in that stuff. For the record, NJ.com hasn't called me yet or asked me to go on an interview. Not that I was expecting them to. The guy with the most.
Here's the thing:
the guy with the most YouTube hours.
Yeah, if they're gonna sit here and say that their most important thing is video, building a video audience, I don't know what they're doing if they're not talking to you, but just like so many other options, I bet you they wanted to, hire their own guy. You know what I mean? I think it's what's going to happen. I've looked at how everybody's acted. I think Daniel going to Nichols kind of tells the story there. I think it would be interesting if they told a bunch of people that they were looking for video and then hired Christy. I think Christy would be great at it. I would hire Christy, but I haven't seen her focus be video. So it would just be interesting that they're telling all these people that, and then they would hire her. That's just my thoughts on it. I don't know that. I would hire Christy. I think Christy's the right person for the job, but it sounds, that would just, the way they're describing it sounds like an outside hire. I have no information on this.
Oh, the way I look at it, all right. You looked at, I read that job description 5 times. 5 times. I was one of the first 10 years ago to do this thing. multi-live streaming on social media, which was somewhat unheard of. And back in the early days, things, it's before COVID, we really had to figure things out to do this type of production. And and doing in a live setting at a bar. We were doing that before COVID. If you remember, PJ Ryan's, Taj, all these other places. And I just find it very interesting that they went more on that YouTube based. And I'm kind of interested to see who they're going to hire, but I can assure you, I have not gotten any communication from NJ.com, which is funny because I actually went to school with the Newhouses, by the way. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah. I think the one is high up in Condé Nast right now. And it was actually a journalism class, by the way.
It's funny.
Ironically enough.
That is. Yeah. That's, yeah.
So I'm name dropping if you're watching NJ.com.
I have to think at this point they got
somebody's already got it. Somebody's already got it.
Sorry, bud.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I enjoy what I do. I don't need NJ.com. It'd be a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. 24/7, 365. Chasing the news.
Yeah, I don't know. I looked at the job and I was like, that ain't for me. That's what I know again.
You're a YouTube star on this farm programming.
I'm doing just fine where I'm at, and I say that all the time. And people don't believe me. I love what I do for Pucks and Pitchforks. I do. I love it a lot. I've had multiple opportunities to leave for more money. And I said no.
That's true. That is true. I'm a witness to it.
Yeah, the grass isn't always greener. I got to shout out my boss, Steph Driver, who's leads our NHL division. Just a great person to work for. I work for Louis Torado, who does a lot for Sports Illustrated now. Before that, another great person to work for. Appreciates the talent, appreciates the hard work, and you don't get that a lot in this industry. There's a lot of people who expect a lot just because it's sports. And, I'm just happy where I'm at Fansided. And also, I'm really far away from Nork. So it's a commitment. And, so I commend all of you folks. Listen, they say it's a young man's game. So I commend you, Sam, for throwing your hat in against those people. Yeah, you should have got an interview, at least. That's my take, just based on what they were telling people that they were looking for. I was connected to a lot of people that applied. At least 4. You were one of the 4 I know of, at least.
And you see my resume. Did I show you my resume? I thought I showed you my resume.
You did. It
was pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
No misspellings.
But yeah, so here's the thing, Sam. I am prepared to invite that person onto the podcast.
Heck
to come
yeah.
speak with us.
Heck yeah.
So, whoever you are, you got an open invitation. But anyway, that's all I got, Sam.
Yeah. Well, you got any plugs?
PucksandPitchforks.com. Go there right now to hear my thoughts on Nico Hischier for Quinn Hughes. I think it's a terrible idea, but I go into detail about why it would be bad. I use the Minnesota Wild as a perfect example as why that would suck. Ant Barbaro, I might be saying his name wrong, but he's going to write about the ECHL team in Trenton. That's going to go up tomorrow morning. We're going to have an announcement soon, Sam.
Wow.
We have a very exciting announcement about pucksandpitchforks.com coming soon. That's the tease. I think a lot of you are going to like it.
I hope you tell me after the show ends.
Ooh, maybe.
That's the tease. I better hit the music right now, right?
Yeah.
So I can find out. Yeah. Well, great podcast, Nick. The NJ.com thing, I'll tell you, I would have to give up the big stage at American Whiskey if I was doing the NJ.com thing. That's very hard to give up.
Again.
Well, I'm like you.
It wouldn't be me.
But like you, I think
Everything
what we're
takes
doing
sacrifice.
is really, I think what we're doing here at Let's Go to Hell's podcast and this alliance with pucksandpitchforks.com is actually pretty cool, in my opinion. Going on many
We've been
years
doing it a long
now.
time, and I never regret my Wednesdays.
Yeah. I thought it was supposed to be a 2-year plan. I don't remember. It's awesome.
That was COVID got
Yeah.
in the way, and
COVID changed everything. Anyway, R. Heaton says you probably shouldn't trade your number one center for anything. That's his opinion.
not right now.
Nope.
There's just not a lot out there. There's probably 20 number one centers.
Yeah.
So you do the math.
And the last thing I'll say is Billy G, he does not hold the cards right now. Till next time, let's go Devils.